This is another episode of Cross Border Intellectual Dialogue. I am Narayan Bhatrai. Today I have a new guest. She is a Nepali Canadian poet, Saraswoti Lamichhane. So this talk program comes every 2 months. I usually interact with a literary diaspora person, man of literature, and this program is brought out in association with International Nepali Literary Society, Northern California chapter. And this program goes live on DC Nepal. So I would like to welcome everyone listening to us today on this DC Nepal platform. Before we begin our talk program today, I would like to introduce my guest. Saraswoti Lamichhane is a poet, translator, and editor whose works have appeared in several anthologies and journals. She is the author of Karaikhola Flows, Mewenji House 2026, co-editor of Kavya, Anthology of Nepali Poetry in English, Grace Parapress 2023, and co-author of Six Strings, a joint anthology of poems published in 2011. She has been featured at various events, including the Edmonton Poetry Festival and the AWP conference. She has published translations and literary essays. Lamichhane's works have been supported by Alberta Foundation of Arts and the Writer's Guild of Alberta. She holds an MA in English from Pokhara University and a creative writing certificate from University of Toronto. Lamichhane is the recipient of Bayer's Art Award in St. Alberta. So let's welcome Saraswoti Lamichhane to the talk program. Good morning, Saraswati. Welcome to the Cross Border Intellectual Dialogue.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Narayan and DC Nepal, for having me here today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Yeah, and recently you have come up with a new anthology of poetry, Karaikhola Flows.
Yes.
Yeah, of course we will be talking about it and talking about many more. But let's start with poetry itself. Would you mind reading a poem from your collection?
Okay, sure. I'll wave the book here. Oh, I think I blurred my background. I'm going to read a poem, Sibling Trees. This is from my father, Hua. Uh, the background is by now he has kept close to 1 million sapling nurseries. When I was child, before I was born, my father sold most of his property to build a school, and then he moved to a slope of Karaikhola where nobody wanted to live, and there used to be landslide around it. Not more than 10 trees were in the areas, and it's about him planting sibling trees. Way above our new home, from the hilltop, Dad looks down at the bare land. Scars of landslides raked to the river, a graveyard filled with rubbles. Dad says summer was but a long drought. Nurseries thrive. Year after year, 100,000 saplings are sent down. A trial of survival. Yet the walls keep collapsing. Hope shatters, patience lingers to mend. Dad says, when you were born, the earth was green. Here I am, the daughter of the land my father is married to, a sibling to the trees that fill my breath. I sail from my cradle, a sacred nest. My roots are woven in the belly of the earth.
Thank you so much. That's amazing line. My roots are buried on the belly of the earth. Yeah,
Thank you.
for sure. Your father sounds like a nature lover and a very creative person in himself, right? Okay, so with this poetry, we would like to continue. Our discussion will be in four sections. We'll start with a short biographical overview, and then conversation on text. We will be delving into Karaikhola Flows, how it came into, how it got into your mind and out to the publication and to the
Yeah.
market now. And we'll be talking about intellectual exchange on writing. We will be discussing on general idea about literature, and finally there is a quick response segment, rapid fire. Are you
Okay.
ready?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so let's start with your childhood memories. Memories are very powerful tool, as Salman Rushdie puts it, like especially for diaspora authors like us. Memories, like the broken memories, are where we start building our home of, like, imaginary homelands, right? So let's start with your childhood memories. Highlight some of your beautiful memories of your childhood and influence of childhood inspiration in shaping your literary journey. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that broken memories.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll note that. My childhood quite ordinary indeed. In the midwestern hillside in Nepal, rural community where very few people lived, and pretty soon you would almost connect with all the people around your villages, like six, seven villages around where I lived. So there were limited resources in books. There were only two bookstore in the town. We had to walk on foot, 7 kilometers back and forth, 20 kilometers walking. So uh, pretty soon there were no more books for me to read. And um, I used to follow my dad everywhere he went. And that gave me this opportunity to collect all the stories that people he connected with. So um, in an ordinary day, if I had to follow him to the market and back, I would probably have 12 stories from different people talking to him on the way, right? Talking about nature, um, it is not that romanticized and all beautiful. My childhood also, there is also war, armed Maoist movement about
Yeah.
10 years. So I was between the age of 9 to 19, let's say. There was also war in the background and lots of terror, school being closed, and there is also hardship living in the rural communities, a lot of the challenges. Um, so it may not be what I write entirely coming from the memories. They may seem like beautiful moments, but there are also lots of challenges in real life. So, talking about the geography and where I lived and the connection with nature, our home backs up to the forest where my father led this forestation, and like the poem, when I was born, there were not bald hills around me. It was all green. Um, I remember him telling me the stories about Karaikhola, is a river. Um, there used to be maybe water in the river like a month one year during rainy season, but later as the forest got denser, there was water flowing in the river year around. Um, my father lived more in the valley before. Um, Education was still gender around that time. Uh, for example, my uncle, maternal uncle, my mother's youngest brother, he got promoted to be the chief of Nepal police a month ago. But then my mother, all of them, they had no opportunity to go to school. And my father took upon himself to even sell his property to build a school so that he could support education for all of us, not only for girls, for boys too. But um, that's how we landed on the slope there where we lived. Um, and I had that option to living on the slope. I could choose, do I want to go to the city where you can bike, you can even rollerblade, uh, you can play soccer, volleyball, or do I want to go towards the forest, forays, or and then I naturally, with my instinct and interest, I chose the forest. So most of my childhood until the age of 14 is entirely dwelling in the forest alone. You could walk into the forest that also connected to the crown land behind it, eventually led to different district and much rural areas. So looking for the fruits in the wilderness and foraging different vegetables, even for mother, for example, fiddlehead, niguro, and other food. And also the connection with water, river. And that also shapes largely on what I write. And that's how I belong to where I live in Canada also. So that's some connection I built while I was young.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. That is great. So you're like going wild and then following your father, and then that actually gave you a poetry. So you got poetry from the jungles, the dales, the mountains.
Yeah, that's right. Like, even the poetry around that time, when I had to read the poetry from Nepali poets, they were mostly, if you recall, even from Devkota and other poets, um, they were centered around nature, like your connection with land.
Right.
Some of them were like much like patriotic, like theme. Even the songs that would play in the radios were um, somehow connected to land. There is that existing literary, poetic uh, idea already, largely that sips. I think all of us coming from Nepal. Yeah,
So moving on to next question.
yeah.
How was your schooling spent? So did you involve yourself in creative activity during your school college years? Can you highlight some of your memories on that?
Um, I don't remember all the details, but um, there used to be competitions around poetry, district level competition, and then I remember being part of it. And some of the poems were published in a magazine called Muna, and
Yeah.
it was a neat idea to see your words for the first time.
Yeah.
Not much. I never wrote poetry with an intention of, hey, I want to become a poet tomorrow. It was uh, unintentional, and I did not know where it was going to reach. More than becoming a writer or a poet, I think the hunger for stories and books, even where I lived again, the land in the hillside, there were a lot of families migrating from Mugu in the Himalayas villages. People were migrating to where we were, and there were lots of families. The girls would not go to school, and I would visit those houses as an ambassador trying to get the girls into school. And I remember carrying these books with me so that I could read the stories to them, because the families, old grandmas and these girls always telling me stories about their even trees they left behind, even what orange tasted better than the rest, or what orange what sour that they never bothered to harvest. And then I did not have my own stories, so I thought, okay, I can read them these children's stories from Japan that's been translated in Nepali. So anything I had around it was resources, and it was beautiful to share those stories with other people in return. So as a child, getting into a book and reading these stories was a vehicle to connect to a larger world together. Not only me, even the people listening to these stories. Like, we've never been to Japan and we did not know where that was on the map. But then we could imagine the clothes that people were wearing. We could imagine them being different from us. But there was this strange connection to the outer, bigger world through books. So later on, when I wrote and received comments from people, how it resonated to them. So the reverse impact of, okay, my stories can also reach to some other world, some other audience. That was probably very inspiring for me to continue. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's great. So I do remember like you were very connected with when you were in university days, like in Kathmandu, like you were still um, a poet on the go, and then you
Yeah,
were like
sorry. I
yeah,
got sidetracked.
with
You're asking me about this.
established like poets, professors. How do you remember those days? Like that shaped probably some part of
Yeah,
your writing.
it did. It did. So there were limited books, and all of them were in, most of them were in Nepali, in Surkhet, in the bookstore. And I moved to, when I chose what I want to do in school was, okay, I want to go get into English. That way I can also study Western literature because there was only so much that I could get into. And that was the only intention of becoming the student in English. And later I moved to Kathmandu. And in Kathmandu, there are so many bookstores. Every block has a bookstore right in Kathmandu. And um, also much more resources and many writers and professors. I did my master's with Pokhara University in ISER, where I did my master's. We also had this Nepali writers writing in English, and Win. We used to have poetry reading once a month, publication of Nepalese clay. We did the completion and poetry too. So uh, I don't know. I don't have answers that one day I got up and like, okay, I'll write these all in English, but I guess it's just like that's what you end up reading and then writing more into English. So sharing and becoming part of that community and publishing um, definitely helped a lot. Or I would say the beginning probably was around that time.
Yeah, of course. Like it was very like inspirational to have a company of like professors, especially like Padma sir, Sridhar sir, and then like listening to their poetry. Like I was also a part of it sometime. So yeah, that was really a good input, inspiration.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so with this, let's move on to Karaikhola Flows, the amazing collection of poetry.
Thank you.
Uh, so, would you mind reading a poem uh, with the title,
Oh yeah,
and then
sure.
we'll move on. Yeah,
Okay. Uh, just trying to find it here. This is actually the last poem in the book.
yeah,
Karaikhola Flows. Life slows here. My feet balance on the smooth beads of her stones. My child body lies in her water. I hurry with her current, tumble over her tiny falls, playful. Then the cloud changes its mood. A sudden downpour, lightning, she roars down the creek of my back. Hidden currents plow through the barrage, and she breaks the blockage open. A drunken river and demolished doors. I become the danger of a deity claiming her dwelling down.
yeah,
Thank you.
that's amazing. So, like Karaikhola Flows, it sounds like there likes a danger. There is a really flowing, but as you mentioned earlier, like in our informal talk, actually the Karaikhola had a different story. I would like to see like what kind of like symbiotic relationship do you see yourself with the Karaikhola flows? Can you highlight? Yeah.
Karaikhola is the name of the river that flows through the village I come from, and the river also gives the name to the village, which is Karaikhola. And the or name itself, Karai, is that deep oval-shaped cookware frying pan. Um, so it is not only about the concrete place and the village. Karaikhola is a river, is my journey. And it's also my belonging and memory, and also my ancestry. Uh, it's also my life overall, how we keep on connecting to new place and what a river has. And sometimes a river roars, especially in Nepal during monsoon season or rainy season. We all know how they flow on the slope. There is a lot of noise it makes. It's much more powerful, the currents, the way they plow everything with them. But then when they reach the plain, they also know how to calmly flow without making any sound. So there is a natural course with the river. And sometimes during drought, river also exists under the rubbles, but then it shows up down somewhere. It's not really, it does not really disappear. The river continues. Um, and it's also for the love of water. I love energy around the rivers. I do that for my daughters too. Every time we go to the mountain in Canada, my daughters start removing their socks as they get out of the car. They have to go take their legs and dip it in the river, and then we have to feel the water rushing through our legs, and it's very releasing. Yeah.
Yeah. So the connection you have with Karaikhola, I just wanted to see like the historical background,
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
you want to
that
know
part.
the story. Okay.
Right. Right.
So, where I come from, like if you talk about the core village, we have four houses dotted on the spine of the wall now. And my father was where my parents are still there. So my father had this property on the valley. I mentioned that already. And he wanted to build a school. He needed money. And then he sold his property. And then he had little money left. And then he moves to this slope where nobody wants to live. Like it's all bald. There is landslide. Um, I even remember when, as a child, even though there were already trees around me, it was all green. Sometimes I remember the day I woke up and then I was just looking on the other side of the wall, like, you know, how there are like layers of mountain, like hills, sorry, there are hills. And I just see the village in front of our village, like literally through the air. It's not even 2 kilometers, but then it's like 7 kilometers if you have to walk because it's the layer, right? And you could just see that right in front of you. There were two or three houses. They slided down um, while they were sleeping in the middle of the night. So that's how terrible the landslide would be around there. And people, my I remember my dad telling us that people were laughing at him. Even mom, her sister is just like, "Why are you living in that slope like Poketo? Like there is nothing there." and um, and I can just imagine him. You know how back in the time, our parents used to take pictures and put them in the album, and then they go through the album and tell you stories. And there is that album with like nothing on. There is absolutely like who wants to live in a place like that? But um, getting inside the head of my father, looking down the bald hill, he's just like, okay, I can turn this place into a beautiful forest, and then there will be water in the river. I don't think he quite thought about that, but it was amazing how uh, there he basically sprung a forest, and also sprung water in the river that was once filled with rubbles from all the landslide. And now there is water flowing in Karaikhola all along. And as a child during rainy season, there were times when there was so much water in Karaikhola, it browned with monsoon, and we could not cross it because we did not want to drown. And we're just like, okay, we're not going to school today, we'll turn around. And that did not only happen with Karaikhola, that also happened with two other like bigger river, where
Because
my
of the Karaikhola.
older sibling, yeah, well, older siblings, like my older brother and sister used to go to school, but then my parents always had to tell them, okay, listen, it's a rainy season. If the rivers are too big, you're not crossing them. And then they had people they had to go and take shelter with. They knew whose house to stay depending upon which river they got stuck with, right? So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, like, we can see the parallel. Like, your dad sprung a river out of a drought, like an empty place, right, with a landslide, and now that gave you a spring of poetry to daughter long time after, which is isn't that very amazing? And the poem themselves are so soothing,
Yeah.
and they are so evocative of the landslide, the mountains. And the amazing thing is that they get compared with what you see in the mountains of Canada,
Yeah.
and then that brings back to home. So they kind of oscillation. Anyway, so we move on to. Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful story. I guess that has to be recorded, you
Thank
know.
you for asking.
And then it's very good insight how poetry can spring from a drought, right? Yeah, and how water can spring. So it's all about imagination. So your dad imagined and you imagined. It's kind of a parallel. Anyway, a lot of
Yeah.
your poetic imagination revolves around mountains, rivers, and jungle. I know you are a good photographer. What kind of connection do you find between traveling, photography, and poetry?
Traveling had always been, I call myself, I have itchy fit. Even in Nepal, I had to travel at least to the next village that I had never been. So if anybody came from the village, I always asked my mom, I'm just like, can I just go? Like, I'll come back. So, um, and then the last hill from the house, Harre, there were 20 peaks between the house and Harre, and we didn't know what lied behind it. And we were told there is Nepalganj, there is border to India, there is much more bigger city, there is train, you could connect to a bigger world. So travel has always been, um, uh, I am never going to have enough with that. So,
Right.
and coming to Canada was probably one of the reason too. And what was the other question? I think I lost you there. So
No,
you
that's
said
good.
that
So
between the
photography, yeah, and then
photography and
poetry,
poetry.
the
Okay.
travel, right?
Um, so for the photography, I take picture of the landscape, mostly wildlife, and then it's much more similar to what I write about. So um, I want to say a photography, a image that I took picture of holds a poem in the form of an image.
Right, abstract poem.
And my poems can also be an image held by words. So there is that connection. They're basically the same thing, but then one holds the poem in the shape form of an image. The other one holds a poem in the form um, of the word. Sorry, holds the image in the form of the words.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, okay. So I want to move on to next. Like your poems are like very beautifully crafted. I read like 5 times a poem.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, they are very lucid, deeply reflective, and thought-provoking. What brings such a refinement in your poetry? Like for a learner, how would you share your experience? How
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm flattered. Um, I I'm still working on my craft. Um, there is so much room for me to improve. And thank you for finding something that you thought that was already good for you.
Right.
So for me, I don't know, editing and working in the craft, because every poem, they come with their own tone and voice. When they immerse with ideas, every poem have their own distinct voice with them, that I hear. So I find I want to honor. So there is that responsibility for me not to distort those organicity while I'm working on my craft or while I'm editing it. I have not yet found a fine line where I can say, uh, hey, this is where the poem is done editing or done being crafted. I read many poems by many other poets and odd, and I want to work towards that. But what I've done for the poems here in the book is, um, there is the line where I uh, write, edit, and then I share with my friends. I read out loud. And if I'm happy with it, that's where I drop it. So there's really no fine line or any laid out rules to say this is what I'm doing. It's just a process of comes from the observation, and there is a process of creation, and then I share it. If I'm happy, and that's what I call it's complete.
So, like typically, for a poem, how many times you revise, like edit?
Some of the poems, a lot of the times, and some other times, mm, not that much.
Like in average, like 3 times,
Okay. Yeah, let's say 3 times. Yeah,
3 times.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That
Okay.
sounds good. Like, yeah, I guess everyone who wants to write good poetry can get inspired from Saraswati's poems. Karaikhola Flows, they are a model, really, because poetry is not a big thing. Like, you don't have to write, you are not going to make a world, you are not going to change the world, right? So, you just observe and then reflect on it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
really, you do a good justice, I believe. So far, I understand.
Thank you.
Moving on to next, let's go into your one of your poem. Like I that touched me a lot. In the poem, "The Crown of Clay," you mention you are the daughter of mountains, and elsewhere you seem to be associating daughters with strength, invoking the Hindu goddess Kali. What kind of liberation are you associating, advocating for women in your poetry?
Um, a lot of the time, I want the poems to speak for themselves rather me. When I write them, it's unintentional. There is no projection what the poems can do. They can serve uh, different readers differently. If you want to ask myself how I perceive Kali is, uh, I work on embodiment, Buddhism too, in meditation, and for the practice for myself too is uh, raise anger is also an energy that we can. It's really fascinating when especially Goddess Kali, is um, not a lot of people had her poster in the altar. Um, that's what I noticed growing up, because they did not want to have her because it wasn't really a good luck, or a Kali because he was mad or angry, or a slayer, demon slayer. Um, and my grandma had a very small picture of Kali in her blue skin, um, just like sticked on top of her altar. And it was really fascinating to look at her fearlessly, like, even to gaze at her as a child. So it's more of how I embody her. And I'm not really implying violence, referring to Kali. So it's not a violence for violence, but the destruction is more for creation. Like sometimes certain things in our life needs to be destroyed in order to create. So that's more probably what I'm leaning on.
Yeah. So we can see the difference. Like when I read your poems that mostly related with like Kali, daughters, mountain, daughter of mountain, my mind goes to tell that like you are trying to be a very strong feminist, kind of, like not as hardcore, but like you want to expose like women's strength, right? This is a part of creation, as you mentioned. It's a part of
Okay.
creation,
Yeah.
and you're trying to. Sounds like you're trying to revolt, but in
Yeah.
essence, you are just writing a poetry, and
Okay.
right. So there's a difference.
So I'll share with you. My experience is coming from Nepal. I've seen more like the male professors who mostly teach theories in classroom English literature. They claim to be feminist, or there are some of the colleagues, and um, the meaning that we imply in Nepali context when we call somebody a feminist, it's almost like calling them names. So I know households, if they don't like their women, they call them feminist.
Right.
So we always laugh about it between like us Nepali author, like women. We're just like, okay, just if you don't like her, just call her a feminist, right? So I don't know how they actually serve again. So there is nothing intended. It's me when I go with this, write about these primal mothers. What does it appeal? What am I leaning towards? So raise is definitely um, when you have anger, you can use that for you can actually transform that into creativity. So that's where I was coming from, actually. Thank
Right. So
you.
you're trying to like, even if there is some hidden frustration, you are trying to reflect that into poetry. So
Yeah. Okay.
okay.
Sure.
So moving on to like, there is another poem that is very amazing that I find is speaking of damage. Let's read the poem first and then move on to it.
So,
Our talk. This is
yeah,
a very
this one is in Canada, in one of the trail in BC. Speaking of dams, my daughters weep 400 miles away from home. I brought them here, a grief retreat. The steep wall of the mountain has a way of entering our emotions, and I have them in training they cannot quit. Bilateral movement of body on a trail only the climbers would take. The reason it is so quiet out here. Only the foxes and bears we saw on our way. The cruel elevation makes the girls cry. They cry until their capillaries break, and they grab hold of me with a look that could kill me. I make no apologies. This is how I choose to repair them, shake them loose from their silence, make them scream the damage they once engulfed them. I leave them behind. I see them keen. I hear them swear. They climb with hands and legs, crawling like monkeys. They wipe their tears and begin again. When the emotional receptors burn, they run. They fall, they swear, they run again. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good. So like, the damage you are speaking of. I just wanted to know what is the damage you are talking about.
You're really tapping into the background stories,
Yeah.
and it is the grief that I'm talking about.
Right.
So, uh, uh, my connection with land, nature, forest, trees, river, water. That's where I go to heal, and that's where I take my children to heal too. And um, uh, it's sacred in a way, and um, it's something that's very familiar, and it's a tool. Um, I've learned as a child, and it naturally comes. And so it's just like, in a way, also passing down to the children, whether they like it or not, they continue is their journey. But yeah,
So you want to like you want to ignite their the hidden strength in them, like not to be
yeah,
afraid to face the
yeah,
challenges, something like
yeah.
that.
So sometimes,
Sluggishness, you want to get them out of sluggishness, something.
yeah, um, there was a grief they were working on, and they used to have certain nightmares that was bothering them, and sometimes we cannot necessarily talk about it.
Mm.
Nature becomes that vast space for us to walk into, especially quieter places. And then when you are going through something that tough physically, um, I see it, like, it works a lot for me, and then it also does. They also find that it also works for them. So you're also, your physical body is also struggling on the terrain. Um, so then naturally you are just letting it out. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's great. That's more meaningful than
Yeah.
what I understood. I was taking
Okay.
associating it with. But like the poetry is a like uh, open thing. Like we can interpret the way we like. So
Right.
yeah,
Yes.
but I appreciate the way you shaped it. Uh, Now like let's move on to the anthology of poetry that you co-edited, Kavya. Uh, Kavya showcases Nepali English poetry to the world. How do you see the development of Nepali literature written in English in relation to Kavya? Can you just highlight some of your experience?
Uh, for me, I got that opportunity. You were also part of it. We edited, five of us, and uh, I'm grateful for all the work there has been before us, by Nepali writers in English, starting from Lakshmi Prasad Devkota and the later writers. And when we put together that project, um, the best part about it was how we were able to um, collect. It took a lot of time because we wanted to make sure that we were uh, not missing anything, anybody out of that. So um, it was. Uh, it felt more like a responsibility. Sometimes you do something for yourself, but it was more for like, okay, there is this one new project that is being done, and we can just refer to this book and find it's almost like a garland between the writers who are no longer alive, like back in the time, who were the pioneers, and um, after that, and then also the poets who are contemporary, like the diaspora poets. So it gives you that uh, map of from the beginning and until now. So uh, it was an honor to be part of that project and to get that done, because that's one of the valuable work being done. That's how I see it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, as you see, like you also mentioned, Mahakavi Lakshmi Prasad Devkota pioneered English writing in Nepal, and we have gone a long way now. Like we have a new poets coming on, like getting international recognition, right? How do you analyze the poetic outpouring of Devkota's descendants?
What Dipkota did in his time was brilliant, and had he not done that at that time, I don't know what else it would have looked like, because it would have looked very different. So, always grateful for what is there behind us, because there is always to take reference from, to look back at, and then it only evolves. Writers, poets after him. And when we're talking about contemporaries, poetry happening by Nepali poets around the world, especially living in the UK, Canada, and the USA, and also in Nepal, and poets from Darjeeling and various parts in India. It has not only evolved in the theme and craft and um, uh, it has been uh, reached to the wider conversation. Like I know poets personally that I love, like for example, Samyak Sartok, and then there is Navin K. Chatri. Like there are many poets who have won various awards for their poetry, and then um, their work has been talked about widely. And that could be, if I have to claim, because the language also plays a huge part. If it's written in English, then who are your audience, or what is the market it travels to, and where else can the text reach to? So um, there has been a lot of evolution, and I think it is just a beginning. I see this flourishing in a much more bigger way than we see.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, for sure. Like it has been wider, and then getting a new audience, getting new scope. We are moving on to our next section, that is intellectual exchange and writing. Uh, Being a diaspora Nepali author, what are the challenges do you have faced writing from in between spaces and being published in Canada?
Uh, One thing I always tell is I don't really call, even though I am a diaspora writer, um, I find my connection to place remains unchanged. The way I belong to the place I live in remains unchanged regardless my migration coming from Nepal to here, when I want to talk particularly about my own journey. But I am well aware um, of the change in the shift, like the shift that happens uh, for a writer when they move from the origin country to the host country. The way they belong to their own origin country changes, because the moment you leave your country permanently and then move somewhere else, majority of the time what happens is you're finding a lot of challenges belonging to a new place, while the place you so very much adopted into, or you so belonged, now you don't belong to that place the way you belonged before, because there is that distance,
Right.
immediate distance. So the moment the way you belong to the world shifts, your position you write from in diaspora also changes, because that there is that huge distance. And what that does, that I find, is the challenges, if I had never moved out of Nepal, for example, the challenges I have here right now are no longer identical to the issues the writers face in Nepal, because my understanding and challenges are different because of my new position. And at the same time, my challenges that I faced here in Canada may not necessarily be identical to the writers who have never moved out of Canada too. So there is this interesting space. I wouldn't really call it in betweenness, because I really take advantage of the space that I am in, because that's where I write from. And it gives me distance to reflect back and see it differently, because there is the not only the concrete space, there is also time. I left uh, Nepal long ago. I moved to a new place. I belong here. I found my belonging in the new place I call home. And we also learn from the new places, and I find it as a privilege to write from, because we've seen two different worlds, and um, there is more beauty or liberty or even again privilege to
Right.
be in
Yeah,
this position.
for sure. Yeah, but like some people understand it in different way. Like I really appreciate you said like it's kind of we are privileged because like we can see two worlds at the same time. So the position is unique, right? But uh, there are critics that they say diaspora writers they often like misrepresent.
Mhm.
So how do you answer like reflect to the question of misrepresentation in writing?
Oh, I that's a something that gets going even when we sit in the panel together with colleagues, writers in source country. Um, it's much talk dialogue, and my position is I do not represent any community. I come from Nepali community. I respect my culture. Community is a very important part of us. But what I write are the stories and experiences coming from me, from my family. And Nepal is so broad. Within Nepal, there are so many communities. Are we talking about Newa communities? Are we talking about Maithili communities? I know growing up, many friends, like I seen that matriarchy community very closely, but then there is also so much uh, 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 of like reverse power roles and patriarchy in Nepal. So what are we talking about when you are there? Like I really oppose the idea of mainstream or certain established writers and poets claiming that, hey, we are the contractor here, you no longer live here, you don't belong to us the same way, you do not have the sensibility. When you write about it, then I can ask the same question, hey, who are you? Are you this mainstream Brahmins or Kshetris who migrated to Kathmandu from rural villages? And what about the Newa culture? What about the Newa literature? So, what I say is, Nepal, being a small country, is so enriched with diverse language and literature within, and it's such a huge community for me to even. I can't even imagine that. Like, okay, I'll sit down and represent my community and write on the behalf of the community. So what I see by authentication is, rather than uh, putting my identity, what about my honesty? Whatever I'm writing with that organicity and with that honesty is what I lean on, rather than um, am I speaking
For
um,
some this
fairly
and that.
for a bunch of.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Like
Sorry, it's always a
yeah,
debatable
but like
questions.
I like the standing that you take, right?
Yeah,
So you write. What is important is whether you are honest or not. And when
yeah,
you write, you don't think about whatever. You just think about writing.
that's
So
right.
yeah, it's kind of a spontaneous thing.
That's right.
Moving on to next question. Uh, like as Nepali diaspora writers as well as linguistic communities grow, as you mentioned, like Nepal has various communities itself. Like so, Nepali, like we talk about Nepali literature. So
Yeah.
what is Nepali literature, right? So it has to be a time to, I guess, redefine. How do you see it? Like we have a Nepal English literature writing in Nepali, sorry, Nepali literature writing in English, written in English. Also, we have Nepali literature. We have various ethnic communities. They have their own literatures. So they all belong to Nepali in an umbrella way, right? So how do you see it?
What I see, Naren, is there has been a lot of changes in the last 20 years, because even my perception had changed over the time and I have become part of it. And even the people around me, the writers, professors, critic, all of us have also shifted our position when it comes what is Nepali literature. So um, I remember clearly being in a debate like maybe 10 years ago. Hey, somebody who does not have a Nepali citizenship or has pursued another citizenship, you're no longer a Nepali. Or you come from Darjeeling, no, you do not get to. Or let's allow them to be. Or so I have seen this um, growing very largely, um, not only written in Nepali language, because obviously there is a big chunk of Nepali literature. There is various languages within Nepal, and also uh, Nepali literature written in English. That is also integral, very important part of Nepali literature. And um, also that INLS they expanded to this year for writers writing in English too. So it was really beautiful to see that. And I think it was much necessary at the same time because we can only evolve and advance when we incorporate all of us together and not put them in different segment and create polarization.
Right.
That's how I
Yeah.
see it.
So like yeah, you mentioned INLS. So I just wanted to see like INLS is an umbrella organization like International Nepali Literary Society. How do you see like and there is a talk about internationalizing Nepali literature, right?
Yeah.
So how do you suggest that INLS organization like INLS would play a role in internationalizing Nepali literature? What does that mean in your understanding?
What INLS has done is uh, I appreciate and I see all the labor that goes into a lot of all the literary organization because a lot of us are volunteering our time and there is so much selfless effort that goes into because we're not really doing it for any individual's purpose. So uh, the expansion this year was beautiful because while when we're talking about only within Nepal, um, it may not matter that much when we talk about writing in English, but the minute you're talking about outside Nepal, even Lakshmi Prasad Devkota, how many years ago, he states that, hey, if we have them in English, it can reach a little farther, it can reach a little wider, and then we can talk about this in wider conversations. So that really does aid into cross bridging. These organizations obviously bridge Nepali literature to other cultures and vice versa. So I see it flourishing more. Obviously, there will be lots of challenges about fundings and organizations and the challenges we always face. But there is also the beautiful aspect is uh, having them also outside Nepal, there is so much to learn from different other organizations that exist here, not necessarily one Nepali organization, but other literary organization in other languages. And then we can also borrow what has worked for them. That gives us those resources too. So
Right. Yeah. And that's the part I guess that they have to work on moving
yeah,
forward because yeah, we need to be connected.
correct.
Okay, so we are towards the end of our interaction today. I have a few questions more about writing, especially as you are very good creative writers. So I just wanted to know, like, why do you write, and what is the best satisfaction of writing?
I just write to express.
Right. Thank you.
And when somebody says that it resonated with them, that's the best thing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Is success in writing an outcome of practice or inspiration? How do you see it?
Practice.
Practice.
Yes.
But there not be a role of inspiration somehow?
Yeah, obviously, because you need to be inspired to write, but then you cannot just keep on waiting for inspiration because what if it never comes? So I think you also have to just sit down and have a schedule and then continue to write so it happens.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I wanted to move on to that part. Like,
Yeah.
can you share about your reading and writing habit, any routine? Uh, and yeah, how do you
Okay.
do it? Like, do you have any specific
Um,
time?
so I have two children and I'm a one parent household. So obviously, parenting takes precedency. And I have a very demanding daytime job, and that is also equally demanding. So when it comes to writing, if I have to wait and expect for inspiration and time to be available there, probably it'll never happen. So it's really funny. If you want me to be honest, I'm writing a lot of the poems while I drive in my head. And when I park, sometimes I'm dictating some ideas on the phone and transcribing later over the weekend when I have time and I rework on them. If I sometimes get free weekend day all for myself, and that becomes a much needed uh, writer's residency there at my own home. So uh, uh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So with this, we are towards the end. Our next segment is quick response segment. It's kind of a rapid fire.
Sure.
Here you will not be explaining, just
Okay.
answering in one sentence, yes or no, or like one sentence answer. Are you ready?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. If you were to pick one, what would you choose? Poetry, photography, or hiking to mountains?
Hiking to my mountains.
Okay, sounds good. Immigrant Nepali writers lose authenticity to write about Nepal. Yes or no?
No.
All creative writers fairly represent their society in their writings.
Can you ask me that again?
All creative writers fairly represent their society in their writings.
I think so.
Okay. There are more illuminators in the world than diminishers.
Correct.
Right. Only the books that romanticize or exaggerate Eastern values, traditions, and customs can win international prizes.
Um, can you
Uh,
repeat that question again? Sorry.
Only the books that romanticize, exaggerate Eastern values, traditions, and customs can win international prizes.
It's who? That's my answer.
Okay. Yeah. Uh, Saraswati writes for fame or fun.
Fun.
Okay. A writer you'd love to have tea with.
Ah, that's a good one. Why didn't you tell me that sooner? I could have thought about it.
Okay.
Okay. I'll say Osun Buyang. Like I love his work.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I read one of his novel.
Yeah, I love his I love his work.
Right. A writer you'd love. Oh, sorry. If a reader calls your work too Nepali or not Nepali enough, your one-line response.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. What is the best compliment you have received from your readers?
Okay, I have to explain that.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the best response I received was from a lady in a rural Alberta village. She was a lady in her 70s from I was taking pictures and then we talked about she invited me over and she told me she had never lived Canada and her grandparents had moved here from UK. Um, she just looked at me um, with this look and then she said, I always wonder about what it was like moving continents and coming to the new place. And she thought me being there, she got to ask all that questions and then I just felt like how there was the connection 100 years ago between her grandparents and me, different culture, different race, different time, and how we could always find ways to connect
Right.
and resonate with each other. So sorry, that
Yeah,
was a little bit of the
that's
explaining answer.
amazing experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So the last one is when you are homesick, what helps you best? Momos, music, or manuscript?
I'm at home. I'm not homesick. I'm at home in Canada. If I go to Nepal, I'm at home in Nepal. So I'm
Okay.
homesick. Yeah, never,
Yeah.
never.
So thank you, Saraswati, for your time.
Thank you
We are to
for
this end of
having me
our
here.
talk show. Do you have anything to say before we end the talk?
I wanted to really thank you for providing me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you, all the listeners, for today listening to us, our interaction. If you have any feedback, please put down, and that will help us. And if you have any questions to Saraswati, you can always put them down. And then, if you want the Karaikhola Flows to read, it is available online. Probably that will coming in Amazon too soon, right? Uh,
It is available except in the USA. I think you'll have to do the ebook, but everywhere else it's available online.
okay, yeah. So thank you so much for listening to our conversation today.
Thank you.